Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 39 of Spill the RT. I am here with Josh. Hi, Josh.
Hello, Eamon. How are you doing?
Oh, sure. Look,
Fine.
I'm good. I'm cracking on. You know, there's lots of things happening at the moment. Getting all things excited for New Collective because we've had a few cool conversations this week. So watch this space, everyone.
Coming soon.
Coming soon to a theater near you.
Especially if you're in, let's say, the UK.
In
Coming
the UK,
soon.
perhaps, yes, yes, in a big city with the lights. I know
The lights, the sights.
the lights and the sights.
And we're 39.
Number
So we
39.
are
Can you imagine?
definitely, we are now middle-aged for sure.
Oh, we're
Doesn't get any better from here.
well into middle age. How was your week, Josh? What's been going on?
Not a long week of pretty much nothing. How about you?
Not too bad. I'm just still making a bit more art, which is great. I love making art at the moment. I'm really in the kind of thick of it, so I'm loving that. How about you? Are you making anything lately?
Oh, I make every day. I won't go to sleep without doing something, but it's just lots and lots of long-term pieces that take time. You know how it goes.
I do. Excited to see some more work from you soon. Let's put some stuff up and we'll share it on our New Collective channels at New Collective Art. There you go.
Well, the thing is, most of my work that I do these days is giving away art, right? And so the
Yes.
whole point is it doesn't show up on websites in the same kind of way. But
Mm.
if you're interested, go to thegivingproject.art and you can find out more.
You'll
Shall
see
we
that
talk
link
about this
right
week,
here.
though? See that natural promo move? But shall we move on to the weeks?
I love that. I love that understated indirectness of you, Josh. Just love that.
I'm all about passive aggression, baby.
You. I forgot to put my in ears, so I'm going to do that now, just in case.
Good for you. Congratulations. Aiming at episode 39 has finally figured out how to go on the camera.
Oh dear. Well,
So,
with all of that in mind,
this week,
this
humans in the
week,
New World pushed back to 23,000 years ago. That's a big deal. Piglets were left to starve as part of an art exhibition, but we have a crucial update. Vesuvius volcano turned a brain to glass, only one we have an example of, by the way. A possible private temple for Hilma off Klint, and if you're not spiritual, they don't want you. And the Chinese art market crashed 63% in 2024. All that and a brand new guest are up next as we spill the art tea.
yes.
Welcome to
What?
episode 39.
Woo! Bam, 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 bam. I have to learn to stop speaking when you do.
That's okay. You can step on me anytime you
I
want, as
know,
long
I
as it's
know, I know.
virtual.
It is virtual. It is virtual. I just have to remember that you need to get to the end of your little kind of spiel and then I can talk, you know? But I feel like it just wouldn't be very organic if I didn't just step in front of your toes now. So I feel like I have to do it all the time.
I follow your direction, and sometimes you step on your own directions. What are you going to do?
I know, I know. Well, sure, look, I mean, if that's not going to be a possibility, then what can be? What are we going to do today? We're going to bring on our next guest.
There
So,
we go.
bring us on our next guest, our guest of the week. It is Constance McKenna. Come on down.
Hello,
Hi,
how are you doing?
Hello.
hi,
Amy and Josh,
Constance.
how are you
Well,
doing?
we're good. We're good.
We're
Welcome.
well.
Welcome to the show, Constance. It's been great to finally get you onto the show. We've been keeping an eye on you for the last number of years, actually, on our social channels, checking out all of your artworks. So we are excited to share them with all of our audiences on Spill the Art Tea. And what better time to do it than today?
Better time.
Exactly. So we have a full show ready to go. We will talk about your stuff just at the end, but let's head to our first story. Josh, where are we going to first?
We go off to New Mexico to 23,000 years ago. So anyone who's taken an anthropology class has been told this idea of what was called the Clovis timeline dead point. Like
Okay.
13,000 years ago, humans ended up in the New World. It's impossible. Anything we find that's older than that isn't actually older than that. And they now have, again, definitive examples of this. And this impacts not just like when humans were, but how early artwork was being made in the New World. Because we have documented land art, right? And there's this
Hmm.
constant debate about how old that land art is. Well, this pushes that Clovis point back another 10,000 years, which
Ooh.
means humans have been making art in the New World a very long time. So how about that? But
Cool, cool. So we're now looking at even like we're now looking at like even longer history certain mark makings that have been happening here. I mean,
Yes.
I'm loving this mark though because it looks kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like lettering or something, which I think is quite interesting.
So it's not actually art. This is tracks made
Okay.
by a travois being dragged because they had not invented the wheel yet.
Mm. Okay, but I mean, so you can see that it's intersecting, yeah. So it's kind
Yeah,
of like, so this is,
it like some kind of X shape
mm,
that had something that it was holding, and they were dragging it.
okay. What do you think they were dragging?
And presumably, whatever they had with them,
Oh,
kids, food, something.
oh, okay.
I don't know,
So
a dead brontosaurus. I mean,
a
that's what the
de
Flintstones always said.
a dead brontosaurus.
Yeah,
What does that look like? What's a brontosaurus look like?
a big old dead dinosaur that you'd eat for days. I don't
Oh.
know. Come on, what do you?
I'm just picking at you.
On
So
the
what?
Flintstones, it was always a giant rib. I don't know.
Well, I mean, what do you think these were made out of? Are they like wooden?
Probably,
Yeah.
presumably.
Oh, okay. I'd say it's probably a little less frustrating now though, because all the tracks going through the underground and whatever else here in London. You've kind of got like trying to drag lots of stuff underground. I suppose it's much bigger.
I guess what I find interesting about this from an artist perspective is,
Yes.
like, as you said, the marks have a certain kind of artistic quality to them, right? And so at a certain point, it's like where abstract art and anthropology kind of meet because you're
Okay.
looking at things from the past and we don't really know what you're interpreting necessarily, particularly as I say on the walls or on the
Yeah.
hillsides and
So
that
it's
kind of
not
thing.
so it's not like a hit and run then, with the road tracks.
What do you think, Constance?
Do you know something? It makes me think of migration and how Native Americans, there is a theory that the Native Americans could have migrated from Siberia many,
Hmm.
many, many thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And when I also saw it last night, it made me think of actually chariots from ancient Rome and how human beings are natural migrators. And I always remember being in college years ago in art school, and we used to all go off to the pub after our open mic nights, and I used to have this joke with my friends that we're just going to migrate to the bar. But it made me think of those two things, the fact that, across the Siberian and North American plateau, and because you have Alaska, which is so close to the
Hmm.
Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia, yes, there could have been possibly a migration. Now that could have gone down to New Mexico, which would have been a Pueblo, I'm saying it correctly? Yeah,
Well, this would have
genetic.
been a long time before the Puebla. That's a particular tribe, but yeah, I mean, you're
Mm,
absolutely right, right? It's stuff that
absolutely.
we're pretty much certain that they went across a land bridge because of the
Definitely.
ice age that existed at that time. But the question was at what point they actually did it. And so
Yeah.
the limit had been like 13,000 years, and this pushes
Mm,
it back another 10,000, which is like huge because it means all these like things they had found throughout the Americas, and they're like
yes.
doubting their aging. Like, how can this be this old if we know that this didn't happen until then? There's
It's
all kinds of
extraordinary.
artwork that's been found in South America, and they're like, how can this
Yeah,
stuff be 40 and 50,000 years old? Well,
it's
because humans have
extraordinary.
been coming across that land bridge for a good long thousands and
Mm.
thousands of period of
They
time.
have, and if you think about like, particularly in the Middle East, for example, in Afghanistan, the Afghanistan was part of the Mongolian Empire, and
Mhm.
that's why when you see Afghan people, they look slightly, as this just thing, they have a slightly different appearance compared to most of Central Asian. It's because of that thing. So, migration has a massive effect on our genealogy today.
Mm.
Um, but it's interesting. You think of like empires in the Middle East, the Roman Empire, for example. I just go back to like ancient Rome and the chariot. I remember being in Rome because I did my master's in art history in Rome, and I remember going to an exhibition and seeing remains of a chariot. And in Rome, on the Appia Antica, you can actually see on the rocky path remains of chariot wheels. And like I think of these emperors and all
Mm.
these sports people go to the Colosseum, being transported on their way. So human beings are migrators. They really are, whether it's the Middle East, whether it's Siberia, whether it's, even in Europe, for example, the Phoenicians, the Romans, the Gauls, they are. And it's how we mix. So we all essentially come from somewhere. But you're right, actually, in that it does look like an abstract piece of painting. And
Mm.
God knows how long it's been there, but I've no doubt that it's seen rain, sun, wind, human activity. It's very beautiful, and in New Mexico, Georgia O'Keeffe was very fond of that landscape because she had the little cottage and she was making her recipes. And I'd say, God, if she saw that, I mean, we don't know because she saw so many things in New Mexico, whether it was skulls, flowers, mountains. But my God, I mean, if you were there thousands and thousands of years ago and you're going whoosh across the track and little thousands of years later, we're all going, Jesus, would you look at that? Must have been going high speed altogether. But it's very beautiful,
It
yeah.
is.
And
It's cool, and I think what's great about it is that we can look back on these markings on the road now and see them as something completely different, and
absolutely.
also interpret how people have travelled in the past and how they managed to make their transport happen, which is quite
Yeah.
cool. I think that tea is crashed right into the desert and
Still majesty.
right off the tracks. So, moving swiftly into our next story, where we look at poor babe in the big city.
Oh,
So we go off to Copenhagen, which
oh
is in
my God.
Denmark. There was an artist, right, who wanted to show a protest against the 25,000
Mm,
pigs that get eaten or killed every day in Denmark, right? And
mm,
so what did he do? I'm going to starve 3 piglets to death, right? And it's literally the title of the piece is like, now you're paying attention, right? Like you care
mm,
about, and when I told people about this, like they cared about the 3 piglets. And I said, well, what about the 25,000 piglets that are getting killed each day to make food? And they're
mm.
like, well, I don't care about them. I care about these 3. So sure enough, what ends up happening, this is the crucial update. They didn't starve. Don't freak out, folks. Someone who knew about this, who is working with the artist, had 3 people break in and they stole the pigs so
Oh
that they
my
could not
goodness.
be starved to death.
So
But but it
okay.
raises but it raises this key point, right? Everyone gets all upset about the 3 pigs because they
Mm,
have names, but the
yeah,
25,000 that have no names,
yeah.
right? They're like, hey, bring on the ham.
That are farmed in horrible conditions and
Yeah,
are completely compacted
yeah.
into these horrific
And
environments. Yeah,
that
no,
was
it's the terror stories.
right. And that was the artist's point. Now, the issue, of course, is that this is actually abuse. And like the society in Denmark said, look, we don't want to do this. Animal cruelty, to protest animal cruelty is not what we're trying to do
Mm.
here. Right. 2 wrongs don't make a right.
No, no. Well, like I think as well, like is there an alternative way of getting this point across without having to put live pigs into cages? You know,
But the live kids, the live pigs are actually already in cages, right? So all
Well,
you're
yeah,
doing is
true.
pointing, right? It's like a found object, right? You're
Yeah.
taking the urinal and you're twisting it. Okay, so I took 3 piglets
Mm.
that, if I didn't give them a name, would have just disappeared into the system, and
Mm.
instead now I've made you see them in a way you hadn't seen them before. One
And
could
but
argue
yeah.
that's the whole point of art, right?
And potentially they're getting better treatment in the gallery than what they would be in the pens.
I Well, they're being fed in the pens. They're being starved to death. Well, they were being
Yeah,
starved to death in the gallery.
yeah.
What do you think, Constance?
Well, I think that there are better ways to promote a political cause through art
Yes.
and much better ways. I mean, you could do something visual like painting piglets, maybe crying or maybe um, it- being shoved away in lorries, like, or you could do symbols of like, because yes, Denmark is one of the biggest producers of pork, and there is a lot of questionable ethics about their production. There are better ways. I think that this artist, now it's it's very important to how do I say this? If you want to promote a cause in art, that's wonderful. We need political artists. We need to care for the world.
Mm.
But if you push it way too far, it's going to annoy people. Like, let's say a child could be very upset looking at those little piglets. I mean, even I don't like seeing that, and I have quite a strong stomach. But I think that you can go too far, and I think that, for example, I'm just looking at costs now, for example, and this sounds very capitalist. Like those piglets, that's a waste of money. That's money gone out the window. Now, if they were farmed organically, let's say like in a free range manner, okay, that's fine. But it's interesting what you were saying. Okay, there are thousands of other piglets that are in crates that don't necessarily have names or such as collective identities. But when you are a political artist, and if you want to promote a cause, you just do have to be a little bit sensitive. You really do. I mean, well, look, humans are funny creatures. We make mistakes.
Mm.
Sometimes we get carried away. Sometimes we become obsessive. I've seen it myself with certain artists. who go overboard, and it's it's just, it's just with the animals,
Mm.
you could do something like let them escape and let them live in a forest and live
Yeah.
on
I feel
tasty
I
stuff.
feel I feel like what would maybe been a stronger point is if they actually went and took some documentary evidence of what's happening in the farms
Yes.
or in some of those factories and had a really horrific image that was put
Hmm.
into a gallery and then highlighted, look, this is actually what's happening and these all are
Yeah.
nameless. What do you think, Josh? You
Well, one could argue that's already been done many times,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so
absolutely. Yeah.
the purpose, there's different branches of political art. And so one branch is literally called agitprop,
Mm,
agitation propaganda. And the
mm,
goal was precisely to be a stone in people's shoe.
yeah.
And
Good
and
statement.
and it brings, I mean, pictures of slaughtered animals, at least in the United States, are fairly common. Like no one doubts what's happening. Like everyone's aware of this, right? And so it doesn't stop it in any way. And so one could argue, to put in a little pitch for Katrina Takuma, one of
Yeah.
our artists in the collective, right? But she has a whole series of
She
painting
does.
animals
Mm,
precisely
yeah.
because she
Mm,
wants people to have a name and a face and a
mm,
picture that goes with what actually is happening behind those doors that we don't go into.
yeah.
So one could argue that that's a different, that's like,
Yeah.
that's being political too, right? It's just not
Mm,
the same level of
no.
agitation. This obviously got under people's skin,
Yeah.
no pun intended. And part of it was the fact of like allowing things to die slowly as opposed to killing them quickly, because that's mercy killing them,
Yeah.
right? And then also this idea like of giving them names. And there's a great scene in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a restaurant at the end of the universe, where the cow has been bred to want to be eaten. So it
Mm,
comes out to your table and it's like, hey, I've been eating really good. My rump is extra fat. A good cut of my rump will be fantastic. And Arthur Dent, the human, is like, I can't eat this. Can no longer, because it
yeah.
has a name and a face, right? And it's
Yeah.
like Zaphod Beeblebrox is like, what are you nuts? Bring on the steaks. I'm hungry. Like,
Yeah.
don't be a hypocrite. If you want it, then you want it.
Mm,
And so, like, I think this brings to mind for people this like very gray zone because they end up being hypocrites.
yeah.
They're not caring about what's happening behind those doors.
Yeah. I agree, and I think with what Katrina is doing is she's looking at things with kindness, and how she is like giving these
Yeah.
animals the rightful place that they deserve in the world. And also I think even like looking at what Lucy Lamb does with her pig in her pen, like she has videos of her giving her pig cuddles on TikTok, and it's very cute and like, but like again, free ranged completely, like they have their own pen and they've like big massive land to kind of roam around and eat the grass and have a great time, but like she's showing something completely different by means of just showing 5-minute videos of her cuddling the pig, which is just another way of, it's kind of this compassion for animals, but yeah, I don't know,
So,
that tea is spilt. That tea is spilt, and we
But
are
she is
going.
good.
We're going now into the volcanic results.
off we go again to
Yes,
2,000 years into the past.
we
Everyone
love
knows
history.
Pompeii.
Lots of history this
Everybody
week.
Everybody knows Pompeii, but
Yes.
there's another city just northwest of Pompeii called Herculaneum that also was
Hercules.
destroyed, right? And
Herculaneum.
in there was found the only example of what's called organic glass made from human brain tissue.
Oh.
And it has the really weird combination, right? It's real glass, but it was formed because of, apparently the person was in a wooden bed in their version of a college and then got hit with high temperature, but then the temperature dropped, and which caused that glass to form off of the human brain matter. I'm not a specialist in this kind of thing. I can just tell
Mm.
you this is the only example of this that they found. And if you pull up a picture of it, it's really kind of freaky looking because like that's human brain matter turned to glass.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's super cool though. It's super
Yeah.
cool. I go immediately to Game of Thrones Dragon Glass, and thinking about like maybe this is how they could have created the dragon glasses, like from the glass that was created for the volcanic ash, that was put into the brains of dragons, and I just think that's really cool that that's something that has actually physically happened. I love it. I
At
love
least
it.
once. At
Yeah.
least once, right? It's the only known example of this. And so obviously they want to study it as much as they possibly can because it's a really weird kind of thing.
But
Apparently
if
it's
it's
not.
done once, it can be done again.
Well, are you volunteering?
Yeah, absolutely. But once I'm dead, like if I'm dead, then you can throw my brain into the volcano and then harvest it back out so that you can preserve me as this beautiful
No,
sculpture.
this is not a Tom Hanks film. This is not about throwing yourself into the volcano, right? This
No,
is
no, no, no.
about.
I will be dead when you throw me into the volcano. Just get that
But
clear.
apparently that's too hot. Like the whole
Okay.
thing about this was it hit 950 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what, like 400,
hot.
500 Celsius, whatever your metric system is out there. and then it got cold suddenly. So it dropped down to only a couple hundred degrees. And apparently that's the right conditions that are necessary. So you
Okay.
wouldn't throw yourself into the volcano, but you'd have to like have your dead body be put near the volcano and then
Okay.
whisked away suddenly or something. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
What do you think, Constance?
I can't imagine the temperature that body must have gone through in order to. It's like alchemy. It's
Yes.
changing from one element to another. But I was thinking like if the chemical compounds of flesh, glass, mathematically, what would they look like artistically? Because the heat would just be insane. But it's also very beautiful as well. It reminds me of like ink, like watery ink on just dribbling away, doing its own thing on paper.
Mm.
But it is insane. And actually, the ancient Romans made glass. I don't know what they made glass out of, but they did make
Sand.
glass out of
Out of
sand.
sand, but it was
Sand,
imperfect.
that's right. Sorry,
Yeah,
that's a bit of a Freudian slip.
There are artists that take, Orbeez, you put them with water and they swell up,
Yeah.
right? They've actually been banned because children swallow them and then they blow up in their stomach kind of thing.
Oh
But
God.
there are artists that take whole like trash bins full of Orbeez and then they pour hot metal like aluminum and then allow it to get cold. And so then you can pull off the Orbeez afterwards. And what you're left with is this form. It's a sculptural form that's completely organic in nature,
Solidifies.
no pun intended. And that's what this reminded me of, right? It's like a substance that is then cooled rapidly and it takes on some kind of form in the process. And I know like ceramicists that do similar kind of work and people that do things dropping into water to create different forms.
Yeah. It's amazing what, hot and cold can do. It's a bit like if you were to put a metal ball that has sort of a flame around it into hot water, it would go.
Yep.
That is a chemical reaction. So you'd have to ask a chemist, what is that matter?
Well, there's actually a whole series. There's a whole series on TikTok and on Instagram of people doing that. It's called it's like super hot copper ball or something like that. It's like super heated, and then they drop it onto things or they put it into something, and you see it bubbling away and doing all kinds of weird stuff.
Yeah.
I think it would make a lovely crown.
It would, yeah. It would make a nice crown, Eamon.
Well, technically, since it's from inside of the brain.
You picked up on that, did you?
Cha-cha-cha-cha.
Cha-cha-cha-cha. That tea is spilled. And before we move on to our next story, we're going to just take a little break as we learn a little bit about Newa Collective. We'll be right back. Newa Collective, an arts community collective with artists and publications with fresh work added weekly. News and updates to our online collection at www.newacollective.com. Here you will also find our Newa journal featuring articles and podcasts, which are also available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok, like this video, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss us out on Spilling the RT every Monday here on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts from. Now, there we go. And that's Newa Collective. Josh, what do our guests have to do?
Like, share, subscribe, send to 3 friends, leave a comment, smash that button.
Bing, bing,
buy
bing,
some
bing,
swag.
bing. Buy some swag, yes. We have loads of
Come
swag.
on the show. Come on the
including
show.
these beautiful mugs. Aren't they fabulous? I'm sporting my mug today, Josh.
I'm so fabulous.
And you're sporting your mug too. You can get them right now on newacollective.com. And there you will find these mugs as well as caps and t-shirts and all of the above. So how fabulous is that? Have you got your swag?
I'm excited. I'm excited.
You're excited. What are you excited for?
Nothing. Not really. No.
Oh, okay.
I'm lying. I'm lying.
We'll have a bit of swag. Yes.
Speaking of swag,
okay.
Off we go to Sweden because
Off to
apparently
Sweden.
it's the swag that pissed off people enough to cause this next story to be a story.
Oh, okay.
So I think most people are aware now of Hilda af Klint. She was an abstract geometric artist, turn of the century, right? But she was also spiritual. So for her, this stuff was all about connecting to like higher powers and the universe and all kinds of things. I'm not trying to be derogatory here. I'm just trying to explain what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is now that her great grandnephew, so we're talking what, 3, 4 generations later, here's what he has to say. His literal quote was, oh shoot, I gotta wait for it to pull up. See, my software died on me. I feel so bad.
That's okay. That's okay. While you pull that up, I'm just going to observe how
So,
cool they look. I just think they look
yeah,
great.
her work is great, but here's what he says. When they started to sell socks and NFTs of Hilma's art, it was just too much. And so what they're going to do instead is they're going to create a temple, and the works are going to be placed inside said temple. And unless you can prove to them that you're a spiritually driven person, you're not allowed to see her work anymore. That's why I brought this one up. It's not just the idea of like a temple for an artist who is driven by spiritual ideas, okay, whatever, but limiting access to it so that it's no longer the general public, but only people that are qualified to see it on their terms.
But that's like saying I can't go see like the Leonardo da Vinci like Sistine Chapel because I'm not Catholic.
But the Sistine Chapel is a public.
It is, but it's a
place.
it's a space of religion though. It's but like my point being that because it's religious art, considered.
But this is a private foundation. They can do what they want.
I get that. I understand that. But I'm just, my point is that
What's your point, damn
my
it?
my point is that if they decided to say that no, we're going to make this just for people who are Catholic who can see this work, then we're going to restrict it to just those people. Or like even like the chapels of Padua, for example. Like there's pre-Christian art history art.
But isn't that already the case? Like you have all these different groups. You have
can
all
go
these
in,
different
though,
secret
regardless of whether.
societies. No. You have different societies and different groups and things where you don't have access to their manuscripts, to whatever they have for artwork, unless you're a member of their group.
Well, I suppose you could say that about everything, though. And like,
so what you're saying is private stuff should be public, and what they're saying is no, it's private, and we get to choose. What do you think, Constance?
It's a very complex issue, and it also raises questions about accessibility, because you could, as Eamon actually very smartly said, you don't have to be Catholic or religious to enjoy the works of Michelangelo. You don't have to be spiritual, practice an alternative religion to enjoy the works of Hilma af Klint. Yeah, I mean, look, some people are private, and I think that art for the most part should be accessible to all ages and everyone. And I think it's a bit precious, it's a bit petty, if it's like, oh, we kind of want to keep this because of spiritual reasons. But there could be one of my best friends is a huge Hilma af Klint fan. He actually saw her work in IMA in Dublin, and he adores her work, and I just think, yeah, it's a bit. I don't think it's right, but look, I'm just one person with an opinion. I like the work of Hilma af Klint. I think she's a wonderful painter.
I think
The
it was by.
foundation. The foundation says, their charter says, they have to have a spiritual component to the display of the works.
Did
And
they?
so
Does that come from? Did that come from Hilda though, or Hilma even?
Yeah, Hilma, not Hilda, but
Yeah.
whatever, right?
I corrected myself. Was that so? Yes, it was part of the foundation, but was the foundation guided by Hilma to do that or to say that?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, then I think, like, I mean.
And so what he's saying is, look, I have a problem here, because if I'm going to continue on the foundation's mandate, part of that mandate is it's not supposed to be the general public.
Yeah, well then,
Now,
I mean, if it's the artist's wishes, then I suppose that's probably a different thing.
But since
Maybe.
when does intentionality matter, right? I think Barthes and Foucault kind of put that one to rest. It's not about the author's intentions or the creator's intentions once it gets released to the public. And the reality is they didn't keep this stuff tucked away.
Yeah.
Right? Like they welcomed the explosion of interest in her in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Almost no one had heard of her until 10 years ago. And now it's very hard to not have heard of her. If you're anywhere near an art circle, anywhere near, like I said, NFTs and socks, like This
Mm.
shit shows up everywhere in the modern world
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
you license the image and then it proliferates, right? So, and then unlicensed knockoffs on top of that would be like a whole other sector of this conversation.
This might be totally off-piste, but if I write a poem, for example, right, a love poem to you, Josh, because I'm in
Oh,
awe of you, right?
oh,
And it was my greatest poetry ever. And I didn't want it published. It was only intended for you, Josh. And I put it in the
yeah.
post. But then I died, and somebody found the poem. Should that be allowed to be published?
So there are some writers that have done this. They put a copyright trademark and said in the body of their letter to somebody, you are not allowed to publish this.
But
If
I
you
had
do,
only
you're.
intended it just for you, Josh. I didn't know I was going to be subject to somebody publishing it on the World Wide Web.
Are you well enough that you have a foundation that's going to be able to hire lawyers
Absolutely.
and then defend your IP? Well, that's
100%.
right. You're marrying well, so perhaps I can tell you that I will have no foundation checking after my shit.
Excuse you. Excuse
It
you very
reminds
much.
me, actually, the American writer who actually lives in California, David Foster Wallace, when he died, his wife, who actually she was an interesting artist, Karen Green, she wrote a book about his death. It was called Bow Down. It's actually very, very beautiful. And when you see it, it's like collage writing. It's about their life as a couple, and it's about David Foster Wallace's mental health struggles and his sort of literary genius that took the world by the storm. But it's private in the sense that we don't know who David is, we don't know who
Yeah,
Karen is. Yeah, it's a beautiful book by Dan, but it's interesting about how privacy can be. Yeah, I mean, lots of things have been discovered, lots of archives of artists and writers, and it can happen by accident. But that's just the first thing that comes to mind
yeah.
is
So
Bow
like
Down.
the autonomy is taken away from the fact that they've just hidden their names, kind of a thing,
Look,
Yeah.
or the identity of it.
I'm a
Mm.
researcher and critic. I've never done biographical work because it's too deterministic, in my opinion.
Mm.
It's drawing two distinct lines that
We'll
don't
never
need to
know
be
the
drawn.
real Josh.
Well, not
Never
just
know.
that. It's like if you're coming to like Alf Klimt's work 100 years after it was created in a
Mm.
completely different context, you should be allowed to see that work in your own context, not just how it was originally designed to be.
Mm.
That's what I'm talking about in terms of intention. Part of the reason that art stays alive is it gets reinterpreted from generation to generation. And yes, part of that may be veneration of the past or trying to like signal what the artist was originally intending. But the
Mm.
reality is human culture changes. And
Yeah,
so we reinterpret things. That's the cool thing about being able to be a maker is that you can take stuff and then do something else with it.
sure. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
What
I
do I
think
know?
what do any of us know? We can only
We know.
interpret.
What do we know?
I know
Nothing.
nothing.
We know
But I-
nothing. We're like Jon Snow, bringing
I
all the
do
Game
know
of
where
Thrones
we're going
references
next,
in today. Do
But
you?
I
Where
do
are we
know
heading
we're
to?
going next.
Well,
Off we go to China.
oh, back
So-
here. Back
We
to
have-
Hello,
China.
Chinese.
Yes, ni hao, ni hao. We have said before how the art market has tried to look for places where it can like revive itself, and the two
Yes.
places were the Middle East and
Okay.
Asia.
Yes.
Right. And well, everyone is now aware that 2024 was a horrible year for the art market in general.
It wasn't great
right?
for them at all.
Like seriously, like the one of the things that people use to gauge what's happening with the art market is like, how is Picasso selling? Well, Picasso was selling like 60% off last year. Like if you had bought, you lost a lot of money. So even like flagships have lost and deflated. But people had hoped that the Chinese, the Asian market would be able to be propped up. And no, it collapsed by 63%. That's just a huge collapse. 2/3 of their market went.
Sucks to be rich, guys.
And just to be clear here, the Asian like creator is very small part of the Chinese, the Asian art market. We're talking about Western art that's being bought and sold in Asia, right?
Mm.
And so these are things like Basquiat's that are selling for far less than they would have a year previous.
Yeah.
Like this is a huge impact. And people can say, well, it's the art market, who cares? But the art market is very responsive to market conditions in general. And so what happens there is what's going to happen writ large. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's our leading indicator. If you I don't have an awareness yet that a recession's coming,
Our recession is coming. Well, I mean, there's a lot of contributing factors, and most of them are your side of the Atlantic, mind I say.
I got nothing to do with none of this, my friends.
No, nothing.
I make art and stay alive. That's all I try to do.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
The slide I have here is of this businessman with the photograph. There he is, looking very pensive about what way the art world is going to go. There's a red dot there, though, beside, so that's sold for something.
Maybe he's pensive because he just needs to go pee. Who knows, right?
Maybe. And do you reckon
We
the
all have
photographer
been
was
there.
like, you just hold it for one more minute, and I need
We
to
have all been there. You're like,
it's coming. But it's
Get me
okay
to a
because the
bathroom.
art market is falling to the ground, and until it gets back up on its feet, that gives us a few years to get, so that we can work on our own works. So Constance and Josh, once we have a bit more time now to work on our own artworks and then really, really finesse them, so then when the market turns again, we'll be up in the millions.
yes. Don't you hate, Constance, how your value in Asia goes up and down? I can't
Oh
stand.
my god.
My presence
so
there is
fluctuating.
so wide-ranging that.
Well, as an artist, I think, God, if I'm ever making work, I think, I mean, obviously, pricing is something that we all have to do as artists, and
Yes.
you round it up mathematically to the best economic value, taking account the materials, the time, such as things like inflation. But my God, the Chinese art market is really not having a good day. I mean, as you said, say you were some rich Chinese businessman, whoever that may be in Hong Kong,
Not me.
and he bought a Basquiat or a Picasso, and now it's worth nothing. I mean, you must be absolutely tearing your hair. But it goes to show that if you have a head for economics, a head for geopolitical, the science of geopolitical economics, such as, for example, or art economics, such as, for example, a Picasso is going to become valuable, or a Basquiat, you ride the wave and you take advantage of it. It's like predicting trends for fashion or for bikes. So it's about looking forward to the future. It's like, look, it's as simple as the weather says there's going to be a storm in.
Yeah.
So bring in the plants. So bring in the little garden sculptures.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the next morning, the plants
They're
are
not going to be there. They're going to be destroyed. No, they're going to be dead.
What makes this a bigger story, though, is what drives a lot of this market is really two things. Like rich collectors who are then going to donate. It gives them a tax and lets them join the boards of museums and things. But that's only about 40%. Like another 60% of the art market is actually institutional buyers, meaning that they're companies, they're corporations, they're banking profits into things. And so when they're putting their capital funds into stuff that then loses value like this, that impacts everything that those businesses are then doing. Right? We build houses, but we put $100 million into artwork that's only worth now 30 million. That impacts your bottom line in the business in a way that's going to have impacts across the whole economy.
A little bit. Just a
right?
little bit.
Just a little, a little. And so that's why the fleeing out of Europe, because as Europe started to see their money go away in the last couple of years, it was like, well, can we put it in the Middle East? Can we put it in Asia? Turns out Middle East is probably the only place you can put it. Because Abu Dhabi's they're doing like gangbusters.
So we've seen that for the last number of months through Spill the RT alone, where the Middle East have taken over the art market. They are, but then in saying that, you see that everywhere though, where they are buying out cash or buying out properties. Even in the UK, you can see them buying up massive, very high priced properties in the UK.
One can argue it's the last gasp of petrodollars before that gets exhausted, right? I mean, so they're trying to bank their cash in different ways and grow their economy out of a monoculture that is petrol based.
But I think it's great to use the art market as a little gauge of that we're all just, at the stone's throw.
Thank you, Josh. You're welcome.
Of recession. Thank you, Josh. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for your fabulous economic lesson of the day. So we've had history, we have had economics, and we've had some geography with the volcanic ash. We've lots and a bit of science too with the stone. Oh God. It's always a day of education with Josh and on Spill the RT. So why not tune in every week, folks? Every Monday at 7 p.m. GMT.
But with that said, let's hear about you, Constance.
Yeah, let's talk about some art. Constance, we need to come to you now. So tell us, What have you been doing?
Well, 2025 has been a very creative year for me. I
Okay.
was after some health issues. I recovered and eventually had a real boom in making, and I'm a
Love
great
that.
believer in difficult times can always lead to very strong times. So my art, I always have I have this acronym for my work. It's PAL, politics, architecture, anthropology, and landscape. And they're the four key things that I like to focus on. And with me, I I like to think I've got 12 hands. I
Mm.
love to try all different mediums and I love submitting stuff. I love researching. So basically the art that we have, like for example on tonight, is tiles. I love
Yes, love that.
tiles. And as you can see here, they are called tiles of antiquity. Now, the little tile, as you can see on the far top left, is a whale symbol. It symbolizes ancient Rome. The tile on the top right is actually an Irish symbol called the Blythol. Then the tile under the whale, which is actually an owl, is a symbol of Greece, aka the Athenian or the Hellenic Republic. The fourth tile on the right symbolizes Iran or ancient Persia with a type of bull called an urok. And we have Greece again, dear Greece, with snakes, which are actually a healing aspect. Sorry, those who were terrified of snakes, but they are actually an aspect of healing in ancient Greece. And last but not least, we have Mesopotamia, the Mesopotamian goddess, which is modern day Iraq. So
Wow.
that's basically the anthropological side. They're made with household paint. I'm a great believer in finding things. My family are driven crazy because I find household paints, tiles, rubbish, well, not rubbish, but like trash, and I make it into something else. So they were
Mm.
just ordinary tiles sitting at home doing nothing. And I thought I'm going to put them into, something that's going to be a very different meaning. So I take very boring things and transfer their meaning. If you could never take me to a rubbish dump because I would end up carrying a big bag of stuff to make into a sculpture. But that's about ancient civilizations and how we guide ourselves through symbols. Like obviously in Ireland it's the Celtic mythology, but it's also the same like in Wales or Scotland or Brittany or the Isle of Man. And how symbols, you see it on banknotes, you see it on buildings, because symbols through a positive way tell us what we need to know about a country. Like, for example, in Persia, in Iran, I have a real interest in Iran. It's absolutely wonderful obsession of mine, or ancient Persia. And the bull was, it wasn't just an Iraq bull, but it was appeared on palaces such as the Palace of Darius II, or in Mesopotamia, another country I'm interested in, Iraq. It's a goddess with owls and lions, and it's actually in the British Museum. It can be seen today in London. So if you are in London, go and see the Mesopotamian goddess. But that's basically the anthropology side, and the architecture, which is a drawing I did. I think it's just coming up next, or yeah, that's the one. Brilliant. Yeah, that is an oculus. That's a dome in Seville in Spain. I drew that one day. I actually went into the church and said a little prayer, and just admired the beauty. I'm a sucker for architecture, and I think that what I wanted to capture with this was that it's basically like it's like the Oculus has got legs and
Mm.
arms, and it's like a big eye and it looks down on you. And I always think, God, if people go to that church, and I hope that they'll be blessed no matter what way that comes, that something is looking down on them. Like there's a great sort of power in architecture, and particularly like in churches. That's one of my loves is architecture. And the fourth work, which we had, yes, this is interesting now. During my degree show, a restaurant in Cork called Ichigo Ichi, which is now, it's actually now a noodle bar, and I can't recall the exact name of the noodle bar, but still known as Ichigo Ichi, bought my work, and it's now become a symbol of the restaurant. So yeah,
Mm.
I'm a symbol of a restaurant. Who knew?
Mm.
And in all my years. But what they do is every time they do like an advert, because they have their Christmas opening hours or spring opening hours, depending on what day of the week it is, my work actually symbolizes their thing. So I've been very lucky that they purchased it. They were incredibly wonderful to deal with. It's a team behind Miyazaki in Cork, and that's my work kind of in an outer space, sort of
Cool.
beyond my studio. So that's just a bit of PR, which I'm very grateful for Ichigo Ichi for their kind support. And
Amazing.
last but not least, nature, landscape. This is a funny one. This is actually inspired by a hawthorn tree and it's turning into seaweed. And it's inspired by a beach that I go swimming on. The beach is called Reenstrand and it's a little beach. It's very small, very quiet. And the beach has this tree, which is a very, very, very beautiful, very wild hawthorn, which is completely been bent by the wind. And during the old Ireland, I think during the 1920s, it was looked upon as bad luck to cut the hawthorn trees because they thought that, fairies would haunt you. But I think that trees and seaweed, particularly if you look at the leaves of a hawthorn, depending on the season, they look very similar to seaweed. So it's kind of an anthropomorphic piece. It's actually the symbol of my work. I have to give a presentation there on this coming Thursday, and I will talk about that as well coming up next. So it's going to make an appearance for the second
Amazing.
time. But yeah, it's about trees and seaweed, and they're very integral to the Irish coast, and how they sort of change with nature. I mean, seaweed is funny because seaweed travels through tides, it's affected by the moon, and the tree is, I don't know when it was planted, but my little dog, Holly, she has her ashes spread by the tree. So I
Oh,
always say whenever I go for a swim or if I need to have a chat, she's there
oh,
along with
that's
the tree.
lovely.
So the tree and the seaweed and
Oh,
Holly.
very nice. My
So that's
goodness.
pretty much.
That's a great collection of work there, Constance, and great to see the scope of the different variations of processing in which you approach your work as well, which is really cool. There's I'm really loving that the mark making that you're doing throughout all of every element really. There's a quite a strong mark making element to your work, and even like what I loved about the tiles was the how reminiscent it would be of the likes of cave paintings or that, and with
Yeah,
your massive
cave painting.
interest in that side of things as well. It's just really cool to see that connection, and I love
Mm,
your connection with nature. It's super.
thank you. Nature influences us all. We are nature.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
are. Yeah, in every step of the way.
100%. That's super. Is there anything that's coming up that you want to let our listeners know?
No, no, nothing yet. I'm just gonna keep on
Well,
working.
if there is something coming up,
Well, there,
how can they find out about you and where can they see your work?
Well, I'm a member of Backwater Artists, and I'm giving a talk about my work on Zoom actually on Thursday night. It's on the 27th of March at 6 o'clock Irish time.
Cool.
So if you are a member of Backwater or if you know someone who's Backwater, you can call into the studios. They're based in Wansford Quay and Cork.
Mm-hmm.
They're a wonderful, wonderful institution. I am so grateful to be a member. They're just
They're
so
super.
dynamic. So I will be giving my talk about my work because this is the second interview I've done this week, um, on Thursday, and I have to give a slideshow. So what you've seen actually will reappear again. So
Amazing.
you can go to Backwater, or if you know one who's in Cork, and yeah,
Cool.
or if you know a friend who's a member of Backwater, then you can connect to their Zoom. So that's one thing I'm
Super.
just
And
looking forward to.
have you a social channel that people can look at?
I do. I have an
Perfect.
Instagram. Now, my Instagram name is a bit funny. I have to change it and I don't know how, but it's just I'm just hash no, Constance underscore McKenna. But there's another way of saying my name is Costanza, it's Italian, and McQueenaha, which is the Irish version of my surname. So if you either look at Constance McKenna or Costanza McQueenaha, you're going to find me either way. So
Perfect.
Instagram,
Perfect.
I just use for everything. I have to build an e-portfolio for my work, so bear with me onto the works for that and a website.
Absolutely. Well, check her out, and you can see that tag is just below her name, and we'll have it in the description as well under today's episode. So do check out Constance's work on her social channels, and we look forward to seeing more of your work there. And
Thank you, Aidan.
please do keep in touch and
I will.
share some stuff with us so that we can share them with your
Certainly.
with all of our audiences. So thank
Mm.
you, and thank you so much, Constance, for coming on. You've been a wonderful guest,
Oh, thank you guys.
and
You've been
for
joy
spilling
of
some
the
tea.
spill the beans, spill the tea.
Before we go, Josh, do you want to remind our viewers what they have to do?
you got to like, you got to share, you got to subscribe, you got to send it to 3
Yes,
friends, smash that button, whatever they say.
smash
Leave a
that subscribe
comment.
button. Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby. So we have all our stories covered for today. Josh, thank you very much for giggling with me. And Constance, thanks for being our fabulous guest today.
Thank you, Amy Josh.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. But until next week, stay spilling that tea. Bye for now, folks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.